This is Meet Sean, where we break down real life topics insurance, annuities, real estate, travel planning, and home ownership so you can make smarter moves. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode.
You're staring at the checkout screen, you've picked the flights, you've agonized over the hotel, you've planned the itinerary down to the actual hour.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. And then, right before you click buy, there it is, that little checkbox.
Travel insurance.
Travel insurance. It's just sitting there asking for, another couple of $100.
Just casually asking for more money.
Exactly. And you have to ask yourself, is this a crucial safety net, or is it just like a unnecessary extra expense perfectly designed to prey on your pre-trip anxiety?
It is the classic traveler's dilemma.
Yeah.
You want to protect a significant financial investment, but you also...
You don't want to just throw money away.
Right. You don't want to throw hard-earned money away on this phantom what-if scenario that you might never actually face.
Which brings us to today. Today, we're taking a deep dive into an unfiltered guide from Carter Excursions on the actual realities of travel insurance.
It's a really revealing source.
It really is. And our mission here is to cut straight through the marketing noise, and figure out exactly when travel insurance is absolutely essential and when you can safely just skip it.
Because there are definitely times you can skip it.
Yeah. And we're going to pay special attention to how families with kids should approach coverage, the underlying logic behind those really tricky exclusions hidden in the fine print.
The fine print gets everyone.
It does. And crucially, the actual mechanics of how to bundle policies to save some serious money. So, okay. Let's unpack this.
Well, to start, we really need to strip away all the industry jargon. At its core, travel insurance is simply comprehensive trip protection.
You have protection. Right.
And according to the Carter Excursions material, true comprehensive protection is built on 4 foundational pillars.
Okay, what are the 4?
First, you have trip cancellation or interruption. Second is medical emergencies and evacuations when you're abroad.
Which are huge.
Massive. Third is travel delays or missed connections. And finally, baggage loss or damage.
Yeah. Okay, that makes it a lot easier to conceptualize, actually. It's not just one monolithic shield you're buying, right? It's like a basket of different, highly specific protections.
Exactly. A basket is a great way to look at it.
And reading through the guide, the necessity of that basket seems to depend heavily on a specific equation. Basically, it's your destination, plus your current health, plus the type of trip you're planning.
That's the exact formula. Because think about it. If you're taking a cheap domestic weekend getaway where you're just driving 2 states over to stay with a friend, your financial risk is incredibly low.
Right. If you have to cancel, you're out, the cost of a tank of gas?
Exactly. You do not need comprehensive travel insurance for that. But if you're putting down a huge non-refundable deposit for an expensive multi-week international trip to a remote location...
The math changes.
Completely. Suddenly, that coverage moves from optional to essential.
There's actually a quote from a travel insurance expert in the Carter Guide that really stood out to me. They noted, "The right travel insurance policy can turn a potentially disastrous trip into a minor inconvenience."
Yes.
It essentially functions as a financial shock absorber.
And that shock absorber protects more than just the immediate sunk costs.
Yeah.
It really protects your liquid assets from unexpected catastrophic drains.
See, I want to look at this from a slightly more skeptical angle, though, based on how the source addresses medical coverage, because I found myself getting a little defensive reading it.
Okay, how so?
Well, let's say I'm perfectly healthy. I eat my vegetables. I run 3 times a week. I don't have a single chronic condition. Paying hundreds of dollars to protect against a random lightning strike just feels like a bad bet.
It feels like the insurance companies are just leveraging fear, right?
Exactly. It feels like a fear tactic.
Well, you're touching on the single most common misconception travelers have.
Yeah.
The whole, I'm healthy so I don't need it myth.
Which the guide addresses.
It does. The issue here isn't just about the statistical likelihood of an injury. It is about the geography of that injury.
Oh, the geography. So it's more of an infrastructure problem. Like, my health is the exact same, but my access to my usual safety nets is completely gone.
Precisely. Medical care abroad can be astronomically expensive, and it operates entirely outside the regulations and negotiated rates you're used to back home.
Right. They don't care about my HMO.
They do not. Your domestic health insurance often provides 0 coverage once you cross an international border. You aren't in their network anymore.
Wow.
Without proper travel insurance that includes international medical coverage, You could find yourself facing a massive financial strain just to get basic care.
Just for basic stuff.
Yeah. And if we look at the extreme and emergency medical evacuation, we aren't just talking about an ambulance ride.
What are we talking about then?
We're talking about a medically equipped private jet with a specialized flight nurse. That can easily exceed $100,000 out of pocket.
$100,000? Oh, wow. That reframes the whole purchase for me. You aren't insuring your baseline health. You're insuring your geographical vulnerability.
Exactly.
You're paying to offset the financial risk of stepping outside your heavily subsidized in-network environment.
And understanding that baseline mechanism is crucial. But, the stakes change entirely when you aren't just managing your own risk on a solo trip, but you're managing an entire family.
Oh, absolutely. The source makes a really strong case that the financial and emotional dynamics shift completely once kids are in the picture.
They really do.
Because family vacations represent this massive, localized financial investment. It's not just one cheap plane ticket. It's 4 or 5. It's larger accommodations, prepaid multi-person tours, specialized transportation. The sunk costs are just exponentially higher.
Which is exactly why the Carter Guide insists families with children must approach that 4-pillar basket of protections very differently. 2 of those pillars become absolute non-negotiables.
Okay, which 2?
The first, as we just discussed, is medical coverage. Because children are inherently unpredictable variables.
Oh, tell me about it.
Right. They pick up localized viruses, they get ear infections right before a pressurized flight, they trip and fall in unfamiliar environments. Getting them necessary, high-quality care abroad without being hit by exorbitant out-of-pocket costs is paramount.
And the guide actually argues that robust trip cancellation and interruption coverage is the second non-negotiable pillar for families.
Yes.
And looking at the sheer volume of logistics in a family trip, that makes total sense. It multiplies the chances of something derailing the whole operation.
Think of it like a localized supply chain failure. If one toddler spikes 103-degree fever 2 days before a non-refundable resort stay, the entire trip collapses.
The whole thing.
4 plane tickets, a 3-bedroom rental, the prepaid excursions, it all goes up in smoke because of one localized incident. You need to know you can recover that massive investment.
Yeah. But, I was reading the section on standard cancellations, and the guide makes it clear you need airtight documentation. Like a physician's order explicitly forbidding travel.
Yes, very strict rules.
But that made me wonder about the gray areas. What if a family just feels uncertain? What if there's a non-medical personal issue or like a sudden change in a parent's work schedule? Standard insurance won't touch that, will it?
No, it won't. And that gap in standard coverage brings us to a very specific, highly strategic tool highlighted in the guide. It's called CFAR, which stands for Cancel for Any Reason Insurance.
Cancel for any reason. See, on the surface, that sounds like a magic wand, but I know insurance companies don't stay in business by writing blank checks.
They certainly do not.
How does the math actually work there?
It requires looking at it from the underwriter's perspective. Standard cancellation covers fixed, lower probability risks, like a documented medical emergency or a natural disaster.
Things out of your control.
Right. Because the probability is relatively low, they can afford to refund you 100% of your trip cost. But any reason is a high probability risk.
Because you could just change your mind.
Exactly. You could just wake up and decide you don't like the weather forecast.
Huh.
So to make that math work, CFAR policies typically only refund 50 to 75% of your total trip costs.
Okay, so they're sharing the risk with you. You get the ultimate flexibility, but you take a bit of a haircut on the total refund to keep the system solvent.
Exactly. It's a premium, flexible option specifically designed for travelers whose plans are inherently uncertain. You just get a bad vibe about the destination. CFAR covers you.
A school schedule changes.
CFAR. If we connect this to the bigger picture, protecting a family trip isn't just about recovering capital. It's about preserving your peace of mind.
That makes sense.
Knowing you have that safety net, even a partial one, prevents you from making stressed, panicked decisions during a highly emotional situation.
It essentially takes the pressure off the parents. But even if you buy that CFAR policy, it feels like there's a catch. The source material spends a lot of time on the fine print, and honestly, some of the exclusions seem almost designed to catch families off guard.
Ah, the dreaded policy exclusions. This is where the theoretical protection meets the harsh reality of actuarial tables and where travelers frequently get tripped up.
Yeah. The guide details a few major ones, starting with pre-existing medical conditions. Basically, standard policies will not cover anything related to a condition you already had before buying the policy unless you specifically purchase a pre-existing condition waiver.
Right.
So if you have a known heart condition and you require hospitalization for it in Italy, standard insurance will likely just deny the claim.
Yes, because to the insurance company, a pre-existing condition is a known probability, not an unexpected risk.
That distinction is huge.
It is. You have to purchase the waiver to force them to accept that known probability into their risk pool.
But even if you clear the pre-existing condition hurdle, the Carter Guide throws a massive curveball when it comes to the itinerary itself. It specifically warns about exclusions for high-risk destinations and, crucially, engaging in high-risk activities.
This catches so many people.
And this is a huge distinction because when I read adventure sports or high risk, my mind immediately goes to like base jumping or heli skiing or swimming with sharks.
And that assumption is the trap. The insurance industry's definition of high risk is based strictly on frequency of injury data, not necessarily on the extreme nature of the sport.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It means if a family is planning a classic ski trip to Colorado, a hiking excursion in the Alps, or even a basic scuba diving certification course, a standard policy will very often completely exclude those activities.
That is wild to me. So wait, if we take the kids on a totally normal family ski vacation and someone breaks a leg on the bunny slope, the insurance could just deny the medical claim because we were participating in an excluded activity.
They absolutely could, and they frequently do. The frequency of knee injuries and fractures on a ski slope is statistically massive.
Wow.
So standard policies exclude these under the umbrella of adventure sports to keep baseline premiums low for everyone else. Families must actively seek out specialized adventure sports coverage riders to protect against activity-related injuries and the associated equipment damage.
The source also applies this logic to cruise travelers, which I found fascinating. How on earth is a luxury cruise considered high risk? You're literally sitting by a pool, eating a buffet.
Well, it's not about the physical risk of the activity. It's about the complex logistical and legal mechanisms of the trip itself. Once a cruise ship sails into international waters, it operates under maritime law.
Oh, right.
The ship's doctor is essentially running an independent private practice and is not bound by U.S. billing laws or domestic insurance agreements.
Oh.
Furthermore, if you have a major medical emergency on board, the evacuation isn't an ambulance pulling up to the curb.
It's a helicopter.
It is a Coast Guard or private helicopter extracting you from a moving vessel in the middle of the ocean.
Wow. The logistics alone dictate an entirely different risk profile.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Crew travelers need specific coverage for those unique maritime variables, as well as things like itinerary changes or missed port departures, which standard policies simply aren't built to handle.
So you really have to map your specific day-to-day itinerary directly to the policy language. You cannot just skim the summary.
You really can't.
And the guide confirms this. It points out that the vast majority of claim denials are directly tied to these exclusions like engaging in non-covered activities, failing to disclose pre-existing conditions, or simply providing insufficient documentation.
The insurance companies are adhering strictly to the contract as written. If the activity isn't explicitly covered, the claim is denied.
Okay, so families need comprehensive and in many cases highly specialized coverage. We're talking medical, robust cancellation, maybe CFAR, adventure sports waivers, specific cruise riders.
That's a lot.
The costs can add up incredibly fast. It feels like you could easily spend a third of your vacation budget just on insuring the vacation. How can families actually afford this necessary protection without breaking the bank?
This is where the source material is particularly useful because it breaks down specific, actionable strategies for securing comprehensive protection without overspending. It comes down to leveraging economics in your favor.
Perfect. So what is the actual mechanism for bringing these costs down?
The first major strategy is bundling. The guide explains that you can often opt for bundled insurance offers, meaning you purchase your trip protection through an existing health, auto, or home insurance provider you already have a relationship with.
It's essentially a loyalty discount. But why do they offer such a steep cut?
It comes down to customer acquisition cost, or CAC. Acquiring a new customer is the most expensive part of the insurance business. If they already have you in their system for your homeowner's policy, their CAC for selling you travel insurance is basically zero.
Oh, that makes sense.
They can afford to pass that margin directly on to you in the form of a heavily discounted premium.
That is a brilliant way to leverage your existing assets. And the guide also mentions group rates, which I assume operates on the law of large numbers.
Exactly. If you're traveling with a large extended family or a big group of friends, you should actively seek out a group travel policy rather than everyone buying individual plans. Group insurers offer reduced rates because they're spreading their risk across a larger pool of people, making it significantly more affordable to ensure everyone in your party is protected under a single umbrella.
Okay, so bundling slashes the margin and group rates spread the risk. But the source spends a surprising amount of time focused on the clock. It insists that the timing of when you buy is just as critical as what you buy.
This raises an important question about the fundamental mechanics of the insurance industry, which is adverse selection. The guide emphasizes that you must purchase trip protection almost the minute you book the trip and put down your initial deposit.
Yeah, and it felt a bit like a high-pressure sales tactic reading it. Like, buy within 14 days or miss out. Why do they care when I buy it as long as I pay the premium before the trip starts?
Because the entire insurance model relies on a mechanism of pooled theoretical risk. If 100 people buy policies, the premiums of the 99 who have a flawless trip pay for the one person who breaks their leg.
Right.
But that pool only functions if the risk remains theoretical at the time of purchase. Adverse selection happens when people only buy insurance when they know a disaster is imminent.
Like waiting until a Category 5 hurricane is officially named and heading toward their resort.
Exactly. If you wait until the storm is on the radar, the risk isn't theoretical anymore, it's a certainty. And if everyone does that, the pool collapses because there are only payouts and no safe premiums.
To combat adverse selection, insurance companies institute strict time windows.
Precisely. By purchasing early, while the risk is entirely unknown, you prove you're acting in good faith. In return, they unlock early bird discounts, and most importantly, they unlock specialized benefits like CFAR and pre-existing condition waivers.
Which we know are huge.
Right. Those high-value protections almost always require purchase within a very specific time frame after your initial trip deposit, often just 10 to 14 days.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the exact same logic as buying a fire extinguisher. You have to buy it and mount it on the wall before you start cooking. You cannot wait until the grease pan is already in flames to run to the hardware store and decide you suddenly want fire protection.
That is the perfect analogy. Once the smoke alarm's going off, the transaction is over.
Okay, so let's walk through the practical application. We've got the right policy. We bought it early to avoid adverse selection. We bundled to lower our customer acquisition cost. We go on the trip. And the absolute worst case scenario happens. Someone gets seriously hurt or the airline completely loses all the luggage. What do you actually do in that moment to ensure this policy we spent so much time analyzing actually pays out?
The guide is very explicit about the actionable steps required to successfully navigate a claim. First, you take action immediately. Almost every comprehensive policy provides a 24-hour global assistance hotline. You must use it right away.
So do not wait until you fly back home to inform them that an incident occurred.
No, never. You have to keep them in the loop from minute one so they can open the file contemporaneously.
Yes.
Now, for medical emergencies, obviously, seek local medical attention first. Your physical health is always the immediate priority, but notify the provider as soon as you or a family member is stable enough to make the call.
And what about non-medical stuff?
For non-medical incidents like lost luggage or massive travel delays due to weather, the absolute golden rule is to document everything to an almost obsessive degree.
Because they aren't just going to take your word that your bag contained $2,000 worth of electronics. They need proof.
They need a rock-solid, verifiable paper trail. If your luggage is stolen, you must get an official police report. And the mechanism behind that is important. You need the police report not just to prove the item is gone, but to prove a crime actually occurred, rather than you simply being negligent and leaving your bag on a park bench.
Oh, wow.
Negligence is rarely covered, but theft is.
That is a crucial distinction. What about delays?
Keep every single physical and digital receipt for any additional expenses you incur because of that covered delay. Hotel rooms, meals, a toothbrush, a change of clothes. For medical claims, you need itemized bills and translated medical records, not just a credit card receipt showing you paid a clinic. This documentation is the lifeblood of your claim.
And what if you do all of that? You submit the police report, the itemized bills, the receipts, and you still get a denial letter in the mail. We talked about exclusions earlier. Is a denial just the end of the road?
Not at all. If a claim is denied, which often happens due to a simple misunderstanding of an exclusion or one missing piece of documentation, you have the right to appeal.
Okay, good to know.
The key to a successful appeal, according to the source, is maintaining incredibly detailed records of all your communications with the insurer from day one. Dates, times, reference numbers, and the names of every representative you spoke to.
So you can actually fight it.
Yes. You can frequently overturn a denial by simply clarifying the timeline of events or providing that one missing date code the adjuster needed.
So it's a negotiation, not a final verdict. And if they still push back after a well-documented appeal?
The guide notes that you can seek legal counsel or contact your state's insurance commissioner, provided that the financial benefit of the claim outweighs the cost of the legal advice. It's a matter of weighing your options. But a preliminary denial should be viewed as a request for more context, not necessarily the final word.
So what does this all mean for the listener who's about to hit buy on their next vacation? Let's bring all these mechanisms together.
It means fundamentally shifting how we view that little checkbox at checkout. It's not an arbitrary fee. It is a complex financial instrument.
To summarize what we've unpacked today from the Carter excursions, guide travel insurance isn't a scam, but it is absolutely not one size fits all. A domestic road trip might carry low financial risk, but an expensive international getaway exposes you to significant geographical vulnerability. Families, in particular, must prioritize robust medical and cancellation coverage because the localized financial risks of traveling with children are exponentially higher.
And you must rigorously audit the fine print against your actual itinerary.
Yes, the exclusions. Remember that pre-existing conditions and broadly defined adventure sports, which can include standard family skiing or scuba diving, require special waivers or specific coverage riders. The same goes for the unique legal and logistical risks of taking a cruise.
Definitely.
And to keep those specialized premiums from spiraling out of control, you have to leverage strategies like bundling with your existing home or auto insurance to reduce customer acquisition costs, look for group rates to pool the risk, and above all, purchase the policy the minute you book the trip to avoid adverse selection and lock in the best benefits like CFR.
What's fascinating here is that when you really look at the underlying psychology of the purchase, the truest value of travel insurance isn't necessarily the financial return.
No.
It's the mental freedom to actually enjoy the vacation you worked so hard to plan. It completely removes that low-level hum of anxiety about what might go wrong, allowing you to be entirely present in the moment with your family.
You're buying peace of mind and predictability, not just a potential payout. It changes the whole complexion of the trip. But analyzing these mechanisms does leave me thinking about the broader future of travel itself.
Oh, so?
Well, as global weather systems become more extreme and massive system-wide travel disruptions become the norm rather than the exception, will travel insurance eventually shift from being this optional add-on that we debate buying at checkout to a mandatory, legally required prerequisite for crossing international borders? And if it does become mandatory just to absorb the systemic risk, how will that extra unavoidable financial hurdle fundamentally change who gets the privilege to travel the world in the first place? Something to chew on the next time you're staring at that little checkbox.
That's it for today's Meet Sean. If this helped, follow the show and share this episode with one person who needs it. See you next time.